We think that there is a large logical leap in the case being made by side government because firstly, right, not only do they not buy in or understand the characterization of authoritarian states, right, they want to paint these people as like benevolent actors, and somehow like the succumbing to these narratives would then help people on the ground, especially when we told you how this narrative would actually look like. It looks like hampering to the government's successes only and not emphasizing on the shortcomings that they have committed. But secondly, right, they had the audacity to come here and call out our wrong exemplifications when they don't even understand how democratic countries work, right? They want to like give exemplifications of Germany, right? Do you even understand that Germany itself is a democracy? It's a disproportionate comparison to put Germany next to Russia, especially when you want to argue about the media narrative that is being shared at the end of the day. Okay, another piece of color, right? Throughout their entire bench, right, they wanted to talk to us about a nuanced form of understanding, but understand how they've never really exemplified how this looks like. To all we know at this very speech, right, this nuanced argumentation could be a whole piece of writing with 2 mentionings of how this government is not performing well, right? We think that to make it like a more equal debate and something that's fair, right, we think they have to take the hard stance of just defending that you're just going to succumb to government's narratives and painting these people as a benevolent good. All right.
Your please.
Issue then, I'll take you in a bit. We think that the most important issue in this debate is actually the weight of information in this debate, the weight of information that's actually being relayed to the people. Because understand, right, there has to be a linkage to how acceptance of information by the people are going to be, right? Because on their side of the house, right, there's only going to be an influx of information being manufactured into society because all they're doing is just prolonging status quo and continue relaying what the governments are already doing. That's why we've been explicitly telling you that they're not going to change anything at the end of the day. They're still going to succumb and defend the policies that are being made by governments. They're not going to have any change or like incite any rational thinking among people because these are the same pieces of information that has been utilized to brainwash these people for the entirety of their livelihoods. But before I continue, sure.
First of all, that is an assumption that in one piece of writing, there'll be only 2 lines criticizing the government, because constructive journalists, you can also get killed. However, you get to disseminate more information before you get killed, as opposed to you only say one sentence and get killed.
On our issue of weight of information, but also, right, understand that it's not assertive at best because your side has never done any legwork to prove this mechanization and this impact, right? If you want to argue impacts, number one, you should already prove how this would happen, right? Number two, you also need to prove the importance of like churning out these great narratives about the government. You can't claim the benefits of helping the narrative of information and balancing the rights of information without proving those 2 things. That is the burden that you have to take on your side of the house. But even so, if you want to take it, it's a bit too late. Okay. So now in the issue of weight of information, right, we think that the type of information that's received on people on the ground within status quo is something that's sugar-coated, right? Because the narratives are going to harp on the benevolence and benefiting the governments, because we think that governments want to seem legitimate to continue appealing to their peoples, right? We think that's because of those reasons, then it is more meaningful to have people calling out and criticizing directly these leaders that are in power because of the resonance of journalism pieces that are ignited from these pieces, right? There's going to be an inclusion of emotional aspects of sympathization and shared struggles because we actually understand the inner workings of this government. We know where they lack specifically, and there is actually a narrative that supports the inner thought inside of your head, right? Inside the head, right? This then sparks the curiosity to realizing that there must be great value to this piece of information, which then translates to more newsworthiness of people actually talking about these among themselves, right? We think that in government's world, there is zero likelihood of exposés happening, so people are never going to question things that they don't even know about in the first place. For that reason itself, we think that it also creates like a harm in where accountability cannot exist because people do not understand the severity of harms being committed by their very own governments. But secondly, right, we think that people are also going to people will be less caring of the narratives being fed if you side with government, right? Because there needs to be a large distinction of narratives being manufactured when you want to create symmetrical information. It is only fair for you to push radical criticism of the government to balance out the excessive succumbing towards the government, right? That is the only way for you to balance out the rights to information. That's why any of the benefits that side government wants to push is something that cannot be materialized, and at best, something that is only neutralized.
Your eye, please.
Yeah, sure.
So you're telling us right now that we need to fight extremism with another form of extremism. So are you? So how sure are you that both sides of extremism would end up with a better outcome? Because
Okay.
you're saying you're extreme
Okay,
government
first of all,
and you
it's
want
time,
extreme
and
government.
sorry, it's time. Okay, but first of all, let's actually understand like the frame of this debate, right? We've already told you how this is an information war, right? Where there's going to be an influx of narratives being churned out to just succumb to this government, and there's not going to be anyone countering those narratives, right? These are the important mechanizations that have to take into place for people to actually benefit, right? For people to actually have an understanding and inner workings of their own government, right? We think that because of that setup, right? We think that the rights to information itself is a personal liberty that people have to uphold, and this is the importance of it, right? In order to have this, you need a symmetrical dispersion of information within society firsthand. That's why you have to have journalists calling out leaders that are in power, criticizing policies, like the fact that there's cronyism that is prevalent within your governments, right? We need these people calling this out, just so people have a semblance of awareness of what's actually going on within their own governments. This is the benefit that you will never attain, because all you're doing is just hampering on the positivities of what your government is doing, right? You have zero incentive to actually push out a narrative that encourages people to criticize and think about their government's efficacy. But lastly, right, let's talk about the piece about journalists at the end of the day. We think journalists are actually brought more importance on our side of the house, because now journalists are no longer seen as lapdogs to the government as they are on their side of the house. These people are seen as martyrs, people who are willing to die to put this narrative out, to make sure that people realize that there is a weight of information that has to be actionable, right? These are meaningful pieces of information that would then better off these people's minds, lives, and perspectives of the world, right? We think at the worst case scenario, even if the piece of journalism on our side of the house shut down, we are still able to retain those benefits, because there is like permanency of articles, like within the state through external factors as well. Lastly, the scale of discourse is going to be much higher on our side of the house because of the benefits said earlier. With that, proud to oppose.
Hi, my name is Su Pei, and I chaired the grand final. Joining with me are Rubaiyat, Sam, Umay, and Yang Ming. So on a unanimous decision, the decision goes to the winter side of opposition, Marasi, with the Novice finals best speaker on a 4-1 split, going to opposition whip Aisha. Congratulations and commiserations.